People fantasize about loyalty because it feels safe. They cling to the illusion that someone out there will protect them, defend them, stand beside them until the end. But the world doesn't work that way. If you live long enough, you learn the same brutal truth every powerful man in history eventually discovered. Loyalty comforts you, but betrayal educates you. The knife in your back teaches you more than the hand on your shoulder ever could. Loyalty keeps you blind. Betrayal forces your eyes open. And once they open, they never close again. Loyalty makes people behave the way you want them to behave. They know the role they're supposed to play, so they play it smiling at the right moments, agreeing with your ideas, showing support when you're watching. But all of that is performance. Loyalty is often nothing more than a mask people wear because it benefits them to stay close to you. Betrayal, however, is the moment the mask slips. It's the moment their real desires break through the surface. When someone betrays you, they are no longer interested in maintaining the illusion. Their true priorities rise to the top, whether it's envy, ambition, resentment, or greed. Betrayal reveals what they were trying to hide the entire time. You see what position of yours they were aiming for. You see what advantage they wanted to gain. You see the fear or insecurity inside them that drove the betrayal. Their actions expose everything their words covered up. And this is why betrayal teaches you more than loyalty ever will. Loyalty hides truth. Betrayal reveals it. You finally see the gap between what they said and what they actually wanted. That gap between intention and action is the most accurate map of human nature you will ever get. Once you've seen the truth a betrayal reveals, you start reading people differently. You stop listening to their promises and start watching their patterns. Betrayal is ugly, but it is also honest. And in a world built on deception, honesty, no matter how brutal, is priceless. Betrayal doesn't just expose the other person, it exposes you. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself that were naive, careless, or overly trusting. And that's why it hurts so much. Not because they fooled you, but because you let them. When the betrayal hits, your mind instantly rewinds. You start replaying every moment, every conversation, every small shift in energy that you brushed aside. You remember the hesitation in their voice, the way their praise felt slightly forced, the subtle envy in their eyes when you got something they wanted, the jokes that sounded a little too honest, the times they watched you struggle but said nothing. You realize the signs were there all along, you just didn't want to see them. That's the blindness betrayal highlights. The blindness created by your hope, your assumptions, your desire for loyalty. You wanted them to be trustworthy, so you ignored every indication that they weren't. You gave them access to your world because it was convenient, not because they proved they deserved it. Betrayal forces you to admit that you misjudged people because you judged them based on what you wished they were instead of what they showed you. And once you've been stabbed in the back, your vision sharpens. You learn to notice the tone behind the words. You start paying attention to behavior instead of promises. Your mind stops filtering out uncomfortable details. The fog lifts. Your future self becomes harder to deceive because your past self was deceived once. This is the paradox. Betrayal makes you wiser by showing you exactly where you were foolish. It refines your instincts. It cuts away your softness, and it forces you to stop operating from emotion and start operating from observation. In the end, the pain of betrayal becomes the beginning of clarity, and clarity is the foundation of power. Betrayal doesn't just change how you look at the person who broke you. It changes how you look at everyone. It recalibrates the way you read human behavior, the way you interpret silence, the way you analyze motives. Before betrayal, you move through the world with a certain softness, an assumption that people's intentions generally align with their words. After betrayal, that softness dies. And in its place grows the one skill powerful people rely on more than anything else: prediction. Because to stay safe, to stay ahead, to stay untouchable, you must learn to see the attack before it comes. Betrayal is the training ground for that skill. It starts with the small things. After you've been betrayed, you begin noticing patterns you ignored before. Someone's tone shifts when you succeed. Someone's energy changes when you enter the room. Someone delays responding when you need them, but suddenly appears when they need you. These changes used to seem irrelevant. Now they feel like signals, because they are signals. Human behavior is a network of patterns, And betrayal teaches you to read them the way a strategist reads a battlefield. You learn that envy has a specific look. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, a tight smile, a small pause before congratulating you, a strange tension in their posture. Before betrayal, you would have shrugged it off. After betrayal, you see it for what it is, the earliest stage of resentment. And resentment is the birthplace of betrayal. You learn that fake loyalty always leaks through the cracks. The overly agreeable person, the one who never challenges you, the one who praises you too quickly, the one who mirrors your opinions like a shadow. They're not loyal, they're positioning themselves. They are performing loyalty to gain proximity, because proximity gives them access, and access gives them leverage. Betrayal teaches you that the loudest supporters are often the first to turn, because their loyalty was never loyalty, it was convenience. You also learn to recognize fear, not the dramatic kind, but the subtle kind, the kind that makes someone pull away from you when you grow stronger. Fear disguised as concern, fear disguised as advice, fear disguised as constructive criticism, fear of your rise, fear of your potential, fear that you might become someone they can't influence. Betrayal teaches you that fearful people become dangerous the moment your success threatens their comfort. You begin predicting lies before they leave a person's mouth. Not because you've become paranoid, but because you've become perceptive. You start noticing inconsistencies. What they told you last week doesn't match what they're saying today. Their words don't match their actions. Their expressions don't match their tone. Betrayal trains you to notice this instantly. You don't need proof. You recognize the pattern. You start reading motives instead of messages. When someone does something kind, you no longer ask, "Why are they being nice?" You ask, "What does this give them?" Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You understand that every action has a purpose, and loyalty is often transactional. People stay loyal as long as the benefits outweigh the risks. Betrayal teaches you to track the exchange rate of relationships. When the cost of loyalty becomes higher than the reward, betrayal becomes an option. And this is where the real transformation occurs. After betrayal, you stop believing in surface-level narratives. You stop assuming that people are who they present themselves to be. Instead, you pay attention to what drives them: ambition, insecurity, desire, fear, ego, validation. You learn to identify what each person wants, because once you know what someone wants, you can predict exactly what they will do. This shift in perception makes you significantly harder to manipulate. You see through charm, through guilt trips, through emotional appeals, through flattery. You recognize manipulation not because you're suspicious, but because betrayal trained your brain to dissect intent automatically. You start operating like a strategist, observing patterns, mapping personalities, anticipating moves. Betrayal also forces you to understand timing. A person doesn't betray you randomly. They betray you at the moment when you're most vulnerable and they're most motivated. That teaches you to spot the buildup when someone slowly distances themselves, when conversations grow shorter, when respect fades quietly, when helpfulness becomes inconsistent. Before, these shifts felt harmless. Now you recognize them as the early tremors before the earthquake. The more betrayals you endure, the more accurate your predictions become. You learn that humans are not unpredictable. They are predictable in painfully consistent ways once you understand the underlying drivers of their behavior. Betrayal trains you to see those drivers clearly. And this is the real gift. Betrayal doesn't turn you into a pessimist. It turns you into a realist. You stop expecting purity from human nature. You accept that people act out of self-interest. And once you accept that, the world becomes easier to navigate. People become easier to read. Danger becomes easier to anticipate. Power becomes easier to maintain. Betrayal doesn't just teach you a lesson, it upgrades your vision. It gives you a sixth sense. It trains you to see intentions long before they turn into actions. And once you gain that ability, you become someone who cannot be easily deceived, controlled, or caught off guard. Prediction becomes your defense. Awareness becomes your armor. And betrayal becomes the reason you rise higher than the person who tried to break you. Betrayal is not just an attack, it's a filter. It removes the weak, the envious, the unstable, the opportunistic, and the secretly resentful from your life without you having to lift a finger. You can spend years trying to evaluate people, trying to read them, trying to judge whether they belong close to you, or betrayal can clarify it for you in one moment. Before betrayal, you often keep people around out of habit, out of comfort, out of nostalgia. You convince yourself that they mean well, or that they wouldn't do something like that, or that you owe them loyalty because of history, shared memories, or past favors. Humans cling to familiarity, even when that familiarity is quietly poisoning them. You tolerate mediocrity because cutting someone off feels cruel. You tolerate disrespect because confronting it feels uncomfortable. You tolerate weakness because strength feels lonely. Betrayal ends all of that instantly. When someone betrays you, they disqualify themselves without negotiation. They reveal that their connection to you was never strong enough to withstand temptation, jealousy, pressure, or opportunity. They prove they couldn't be trusted with proximity, with information, with influence. They remove themselves, and in doing so, they do your work for you. But here's the deeper truth people rarely admit. Betrayal doesn't come from the strong. Strong people don't betray you, they confront you. They challenge you. They disagree with you openly. Betrayal comes from the weak, the insecure, the ones who lack courage, the ones who don't have the guts to face you directly. Instead, they operate sideways, indirectly, secretly. Their actions are confession. I am too weak to deal with you honestly. Think about that. Betrayal reveals weakness, not strength. You should never mourn the exit of someone who needed to betray you to feel powerful. You don't lose anything when such people walk away. You lose poison. You lose dead weight. You lose instability, disguised as loyalty. Betrayal purifies your circle in ways loyalty never can. Loyalty keeps flawed people close. Betrayal removes them with precision. And there is another dimension to this. Betrayal exposes the hierarchy. In every relationship, friendship, romance, business, someone always has more power. Betrayal often exposes who felt inferior. The act itself is usually an attempt to rebalance the power dynamic. The insecure person tries to weaken you because they can't handle seeing you strong. So their removal benefits you. It tightens your environment. It eliminates the people who were silently competing with you, judging you, resenting your growth, and pretending to cheer for you. Betrayal is like lighting a room with a harsh, bright lamp. You suddenly see the dust, the cracks, the insects you didn't notice before. The truth becomes visible whether you want it or not. And here's the part that truly separates the powerful from the powerless. Most people try to pull the betrayer back into their life. They want closure. They want explanations. They want apologies. They want to fix what was broken. This instinct is weakness. The moment someone betrays you, they have identified themselves as unfit to stand beside you. Don't negotiate with that. Don't reopen the door. Don't let them back into the domain they tried to damage. Cutting off a betrayer is not cruelty. It is strategy. It is the discipline required to protect your mind, your peace, your ambitions, and your trajectory. Let them leave. Let them remove themselves. Let them walk into the consequences of their own character. Because the people who remain after the betrayal, the ones who stay loyal when it would have been easier to turn on you, those are the rare few worth keeping. Loyalty means nothing unless it had the chance to break. Those who don't betray you when they could have are the ones who deserve access to your inner circle. And that's why betrayal is a blessing disguised as violence. It reveals who belongs near you and who never did. It teaches you that the circle around you matters more than anything else, and that keeping the wrong people inside it is more dangerous than being alone. Betrayal doesn't just remove the weak. It strengthens the strong. It isolates the powerful. It refines your environment so you can move through life with sharper judgment and cleaner alliances. In the end, betrayal subtracts the people you should have never added. That's not a loss, it's liberation. Betrayal doesn't just hurt you, it rewires you. It teaches you a new way of feeling, thinking, and responding to the world. Before betrayal, your emotions operate freely. You trust quickly, you forgive easily, you attach deeply. You give people access to your mind, your heart, your plans, your fears. You assume closeness equals safety. But betrayal destroys that assumption in one brutal moment. And once it does, you begin to understand one of the most powerful lessons a human being can ever learn. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it's protection, it's clarity, it's control. When someone betrays you, you experience a kind of emotional death. The version of you that relied on others for reassurance, validation, or loyalty dies instantly. You can almost feel it, the collapse of expectation, the shattering of trust, the sudden emptiness where closeness used to be. It's painful, but it's also purifying. That collapse makes room for a new mindset, one rooted not in emotion but in strategy. After betrayal, you start observing your emotions instead of surrendering to them. You don't react impulsively anymore. You don't assume your feelings are reliable guides. You treat them as data rather than instructions. The pain of betrayal forces you to build an internal boundary, a buffer between your heart and the actions of others. And this buffer becomes the foundation of emotional detachment. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop caring unnecessarily. You stop wasting emotion on people who didn't earn it. You stop giving your peace away to every argument, every disappointment, every shift in someone's mood. You don't allow others to dictate your internal state. You become your own emotional authority. This shift is subtle, but transformative. Where you once needed reassurance, you now require evidence. Where you once gave trust automatically, you now let people prove themselves. Where you once invested emotionally at the beginning, you now invest slowly, deliberately, and intelligently. Detachment turns you into someone who cannot be emotionally manipulated because your emotions are no longer exposed, accessible, or unguarded. And here's the truth that most people don't want to admit. Attachment is the root of suffering. The more attached you are to someone, the easier it is for them to wound you, distract you, derail you. Betrayal teaches this brutally. Attachment becomes vulnerability, and vulnerability becomes a weapon used against you intentionally or accidentally. Detachment removes that weapon from their hands. When you detach, you don't expect loyalty from anyone. And when you don't expect loyalty, disloyalty cannot break you. You stop giving people the power to devastate you. You start engaging with people from a position of strength rather than dependency. This is why emotionally detached individuals appear calm, unbothered, and unmoved even in chaos. They have learned not to react out of fear or desire. They respond out of calculation. They choose their words and silence with precision. They remain centered even when others try to provoke or manipulate them. Detachment makes you unshakable. And people feel this. They feel the difference between a person who needs them and a person who can walk away without hesitation. Detachment creates an aura, quiet, intimidating, magnetic. When you no longer need others emotionally, they begin seeking your approval, your presence, your attention. Detachment flips the power dynamic. The less you need people, the more power you hold over them. Betrayal is the catalyst. It forces you to build the kind of independence you didn't know you needed. If loyalty had never broken, you would have stayed emotionally dependent, overly trusting, easily wounded. The betrayal freed you from that. In time, you become someone who can love without losing yourself, connect without depending, give without sacrificing self-respect. You develop the ability to walk away from anyone who threatens your peace, your ambition, or your dignity. That ability alone makes you formidable. Detachment is not loneliness, it's sovereignty. It's the mastery of your own emotional world. It means no one can destabilize you unless you allow them to. It means you operate from reason, not desperation. It means your self-worth is no longer outsourced to the behavior of others. And the moment you reach that level of detachment, the world stops being dangerous. People stop being threats. Disloyalty stops being catastrophic. You become immune to emotional sabotage. Because betrayal didn't break you, it unbound you. It freed you from emotional dependence and forged you into someone who feels less, sees more, and moves with far more power than before. That is the gift of betrayal. It forces you into emotional independence, and emotional independence is the birthplace of real strength. Trust before betrayal is emotional, instinctive, soft. You trust because you want to believe someone won't hurt you. You trust because it feels good to rely on another human being. You trust because loyalty sounds noble, romantic, honorable. But when betrayal hits, you see the truth. Trust has nothing to do with emotions. Trust is a calculation. Trust is leverage. Trust is strategy. After betrayal, you stop trusting people because you feel they're loyal. You start trusting people based on what they stand to gain or lose by being loyal to you. In other words, you stop trusting hearts and start trusting incentives. A person's intentions change. A person's words change. A person's emotions change. But incentives rarely lie. Incentives reveal who is safe, who is dangerous, who is temporary, and who knows better than to betray you. Betrayal forces you into this mindset. It kills the childish version of trust, the version based on comfort, attachment, chemistry, hope, and replaces it with the adult version of trust, conditional, calculated, and controlled. You begin understanding that trust is not something you give, it's something you allocate, like a resource, an investment, a weapon. You trust different people for different reasons. You trust someone's competence because they need your approval. You trust someone's silence because they benefit from protecting you. You trust someone's loyalty because betraying you would destroy them. You trust someone's ambition because they need you alive, stable, and strong. You trust someone's fear because they know what you're capable of. You trust someone's morals only if they have a history of paying a price to uphold them. Trust becomes selective, precise, surgical. You no longer treat all people with the same emotional openness. You build layered trust, different depths for different people. Some will only get your words, others your time, a rare few your vulnerability, and almost no one your true intentions. This shift separates the weak from the powerful. Weak people trust emotionally. Powerful people trust strategically. You don't shut people out of your life after betrayal. You simply stop giving them the ability to damage you. You redesign the entire structure of your connections. You stop oversharing. You stop exposing your insecurities. You stop letting people know the parts of you they could one day use against you. You learn to hold information the way a king holds territory, selectively, cautiously, and with an understanding of consequences. You also learn to test people quietly. Betrayal teaches you to watch how someone behaves when there is no reward for being loyal. Observe them when you have nothing to offer. Observe them when your life is difficult. Observe them when staying loyal is inconvenient. That is when their real character reveals itself. You understand that trust should be earned slowly and revoked instantly. Loyal people will not panic when you tighten boundaries. Disloyal people will. Betrayal gives you the wisdom to see this distinction clearly. And here's something people rarely admit. Betrayal makes you more fair. Before betrayal, you might trust the wrong people too much and the right people too little. You distribute trust based on emotion instead of merit. Betrayal forces you to evaluate everyone more accurately. You stop projecting your goodness onto others. You stop assuming someone would act as you would. Instead, you evaluate their actions, their motives, their patterns, their history. Trust becomes a rational equation, not a feeling. And this is what frees you. Once trust becomes strategic, disappointment disappears. You no longer break down when someone fails you. You saw the risk, you measured it, you prepared for it. You no longer crumble when someone pulls away. You built emotional distance on purpose. You're no longer shattered by the idea of someone leaving you. Already know every person in your life is temporary, conditional, replaceable. You stop expecting permanent loyalty from temporary people. This mindset doesn't make you bitter, it makes you efficient. It doesn't make you cold, it makes you untouchable. You move through relationships with awareness instead of illusion. You operate from strength instead of need. Betrayal teaches you the most powerful rule of all. Never trust a person more than the situation requires. When you master that, you stop gambling with your peace, your reputation, and your stability. You become someone who can connect deeply without losing control, rely on others without becoming dependent, and work with people without becoming blind to their nature. Strategic trust is the mark of someone who has survived betrayal and used it as fuel instead of poison. It's not paranoia, it's intelligence. It's not fear, it's wisdom. It's not isolation, it's mastery. And once you learn to trust strategically, the world becomes simpler, safer, and easier to rule. Betrayal is a breaking point, but it is also a rebirth. It destroys the version of you that trusted blindly, forgave easily, tolerated too much, and believed people would treat you the way you treated them. That version of you needed to die. And betrayal is the blade that does the job. When someone betrays you, they don't just wound you, they upgrade you. They force you into an evolution you would have never chosen voluntarily. Pain becomes the architect of your transformation, and betrayal becomes the moment you stop operating like an amateur in life and start thinking like a strategist. Before betrayal, you're soft. Not weak, just soft. You carry too much faith in human nature. You assume honesty has value. You assume loyalty has meaning. You assume relationships have purity. You assume people will choose you because of history, affection, or morality. But after betrayal, those illusions burn away. You don't live in a fantasy anymore. You live in reality, a reality where people act on self-interest, where loyalty is conditional, where motives shift with opportunity, and where weakness invites exploitation. Betrayal doesn't make the world darker. It simply removes the filters that kept you from seeing it as it truly is. This clarity is painful, yes, but it is powerful. Your evolution begins the moment you stop resisting the truth and start absorbing it. You become stronger because betrayal forces you to develop traits you never prioritized before. You become more patient because you now understand people reveal themselves slowly. You become more observant because you've seen how much danger hides behind smiles. You become more disciplined because emotional impulsiveness once cost you. You become more selective because you no longer put your energy where it isn't earned. You become more independent because relying on the wrong person nearly broke you. You become more strategic because you learn the price of trusting without thinking. In other words, betrayal carves away every part of you that made you easy to deceive, easy to manipulate, or easy to use. You start making decisions from strength rather than emotion. You speak less, listen more, and think 10 steps ahead. The world begins changing around you not because the world changed, but because you did. The lessons betrayal teaches become the foundation of your new identity. You become harder to access, harder to read, harder to shake, harder to break. And people feel that difference immediately. They notice the silence, the composure, the way you no longer react emotionally. They feel the shift in your energy, colder, more controlled, less available. You no longer participate in every conversation. You don't explain yourself. You don't seek reassurance. You don't chase anyone. You don't cling to anyone. Your presence becomes stronger because your dependency is gone. This is the evolution betrayal forces. You move from seeking connection to understanding leverage. You move from needing people to choosing people. You move from emotional vulnerability to emotional sovereignty. You become someone who doesn't fear losing anyone because you've already survived the worst loss, losing the person you thought they were. That survival changes you at the root. You develop a calmness that comes from having endured something that would have broken most people. A calmness that cannot be faked. A calmness that intimidates because it suggests you've been through hell, learned its language, and walked out with a straight back. The person you become after betrayal is a version of you sharpened by pain, refined by truth, and strengthened by detachment. You don't crumble when someone leaves. You don't panic when people change. You don't collapse when life shifts violently. You've already been rebuilt once. Doing it again won't scare you. Betrayal forces you into your next stage of evolution. You become more calculating, more intelligent, more self-respecting, and more self-controlled. You operate with a level of awareness most people never reach. You don't live blindly anymore. You see everything clearly: motives, intentions, weaknesses, opportunities. In other words, betrayal turns you into someone you should have been from the start. Not softer, not kinder, not more trusting, but stronger, sharper, smarter, and infinitely harder to break. Betrayal didn't end you. It ended the old you, the version that wasn't built for the life you're meant to lead. What emerged afterward is the version that is. Betrayal always feels like the end when it strikes, but with time, you realize it was the beginning of a far more powerful chapter. It didn't just take someone out of your life. It took the weaker version of you with them. Every lie exposed. Every mask ripped away. Every moment of pain forced you to stop living blindly and start living intelligently. You learned what loyalty really means. You learned what people are capable of. You learned where your guard should have been raised. You learned how strong you can be when you have no choice but to stand on your own. Most people never evolve because they never face a betrayal severe enough to wake them up. You did. And because of that, you now move with a sharper mind, a colder patience, and a deeper understanding of human nature. You've seen how dangerous trust can be when placed in the wrong hands, and now you distribute it with precision. You've become someone who no longer breaks when people leave, who no longer collapses when illusions shatter, who no longer expects others to protect what you must protect yourself. You've stepped into a version of yourself forged by pain, fueled by clarity, and strengthened by detachment. So don't resent the betrayal. Don't chase explanations. Don't look back. Use what it taught you. Carry the lessons. Honor the evolution. Because betrayal didn't destroy you. It refined you. It rebuilt you. It made you unshakable. And from this point forward, you walk as someone who cannot be blinded, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be easily hurt again. The person who betrayed you removed themselves. The person you became afterward is the one who will rise.